Welcome back, you wonderful and amazing people. I'm G, and this is G on what? Guys, we're going to question the narrative every time. And today we're going to talk about January 6th. Now, we just had the anniversary of it, and I wanted to wait to make this video till after the anniversary, and I'm glad that I did because it brought out some very interesting details, so to speak. Now, I talked in the last episode a little bit on HR503 and how the January 6th Commission was going to be used against you as American citizens. Now, before we get into all that, I'm gonna get into all of it. But before we do, I want to show you what Vice President Harris had to say on the anniversary of January 6th.
And what they were doing when our democracy came under assault. Dates that occupy not only a place on our calendars, but a place in our collective memory. December 7th, 1941, September 11th, 2001, and January 6th, 2021.
So Vice President Harris, in your eyes, the January 6th riots are on par with Pearl Harbor and 9/11. Outstanding. Well, let me give you some numbers there. Let's see. On December 7th, 1941, 2,403 servicemen lost their lives in the attack on Pearl Harbor. On September 11th, 2001, 2,977 Americans lost their lives, with 25,000 more injured and succumbing to chronic health problems as direct results from the events of 9/11. September 6th is on par with that. Maybe you'd think it's on par with a few others, like, the Boston City Marathon bombing. Back in 2013, 3 people dead, hundreds injured, 17 people lost their limbs. They put the entire city of Boston under martial law to find 2 teenage boys that made homemade pressure cooker bombs. And when they were tried in court, well, the one kid that was still alive was tried in court, they said it was a weapon of mass destruction. Okay, weapons of mass destruction. We went to Iraq for those. Oh, here's another one that may be an affront on our democracy. The Oklahoma City bombing, which was put out there by Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols, 2 anti-government extremists who bombed the Oklahoma Federal Building on April 19th, 1995, killing 168 people and injuring 680 others. Vice President Harris, your equation doesn't really work. Maybe you'd like to add in maybe the assassination of John F. Kennedy, which all the case files are still closed and sealed, so we could have videos on end about the conspiracies there. Or maybe we should go back to the original affront on our democracy and freedom, the Civil War, which we actually fought for freedom and democracy at the cost of 1.5 million lives. So do not insult the American people by saying our January 6th riot was on par with any of that. That is your agenda. And to think that it was set up by Buffalo guy right here.
He's one of the unforgettable faces of the January 6 riots, the so-called QAnon shaman, Jacob Chansley.
Really? That guy and his cronies that got in there and took selfies and crapped on Nancy Pelosi's rug, those guys are the equivalent of the bombing of Pearl Harbor and 9/11. Okay, well, let's just run the numbers. Okay, so on January 6th, how many people died? How many people died? Well, a few did. The most notable was Ashley Elizabeth Babbitt, a 35-year-old Air Force veteran who was shot and killed on entering the Capitol building by Lieutenant Byrd, and it was justified homicide is what it was ruled as. Okay, so there's one. We had Officer Brian Sicknick, 42-year-old DC police officer who was pepper sprayed by one of the rioters and later succumbed to a stroke, which was deemed natural causes. However, the coroner did state that the pepper spray may have affected the stroke. Okay, so there's two. We had one person die from an OD of methamphetamine, and we had 2 heart attacks of natural causes. Those were the deaths for January 6th. There were 138 police officers injured, 73 Capitol Police, and 65 Metro, with only 15 of them needing hospitalization. So I don't know how that equates to your Pearl Harbor and 9/11 statement, and it's pretty much rubbish. Now, we have a couple of things that have sort of built since January 6th, 2021. Now, one of those was the introduction of the January 6th committee, okay, which I'm going to go into in just in a second, and I'm going to show you what that's about. And these guys are not truly competent, and we'll go in and we'll show you more on that in a second. But here, let me bring this up, and I'll show you exactly what the January 6th committee was all about. Okay, so we want to talk about the January 6th committee and HR Resolution 503, which was put into place by Nancy Pelosi. So what this does, this was 3 parts. This was to investigate the attacks on the Capitol on January 6th. Now, the 3 parts of this: conduct an investigation and relevant facts, circumstances relating to the attack on the Capitol. 2, identify, review, and evaluate the causes and the lessons learned from this attack. And 3, submit a report containing findings, conclusions, and recommendations to prevent future acts of violence, domestic violence, and domestic violent extremism, and to improve the security of the U.S. Capitol and other American democratic institutions. So, what does that mean? That means that anybody deemed a domestic terrorist or domestic violent extremist is going to fall now under the Patriot Act. Now, the Patriot Act was initially put into place October 6, 2001, to combat terrorism. Now, uniting, strengthening America by providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism. Now, this is the entire article, and I'm going to leave a link to this. This is the entire Patriot Act right here. And basically, what this says is we're going to use all resources necessary. We're going to use data, yes, track, trace, and database. We're going to use all of it to come through, and we are going to use all information provided by big tech, Facebook, Amazon, Google, all of it. We are going to compile it all through the NSA, the FBI, and the CIA, and we are going to combat terrorism. Now, terrorism is a very broad word, and when this first came into play back in 2001, I was very weary of the way that this was written in, because this could very easily be turned against American citizens. And they even mentioned the Oklahoma City bombing in this. And I'm going to leave links to all these pages and all these articles so that you can read them through on your own. Now, this was not supposed to be used against Americans, and they said it wasn't going to be used against Americans. So Barack Obama, in 2015, after the Patriot Act had been re-ratified and continued, where they took away a whole bunch of our freedoms, and then said, oh, but it's for your safety and your security. Don't worry about it. It's for your safety and your security. So Barack Obama signed in the U.S. Freedom Act June 2nd, 2015, to hopefully keep that all your info safe, because we're American citizens, so this shouldn't apply to us. Oh, but Edward Snowden showed us quite differently that they were still collecting on all of us. Okay, and now he's in political exile in Russia, of all places, for showing you what our government was doing. Even though they're telling you, no, 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 we're not doing this. We're not, no, 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 it's not being done. He showed that it was being done. And now he's a political refugee in one of our biggest adversaries' countries. Like, take a look through the entire Patriot Act. I suggest you read through it and see what you can come up with. Now, they're going to use all of this stuff right here. They're going to tie it in with the January 6th stuff right here into domestic terrorism and domestic violent extremism. They're going to bring all this into play, and it may take years. It may take years in order to get this into play. But remember, 9/11 happened 20 years ago. The Patriot Act came in 20 years ago when where they said, oh, look, October 26th, 2001, it came in. Oh, these are just temporary measures. We're just going to temporarily take your freedoms away. But none of it is temporary. So now they've got mandates. We want to take away some of your freedoms, but it's for your security and safety. Okay, well, we are currently out of Afghanistan. That war is officially over. 20 years has passed. Where are our elected representatives screaming to get our freedoms back that were taken away right here? I'm waiting to see anybody even bring that up. So with your mandates and thinking that they're just going to take away freedom for a minute, anybody that thinks that, you're out of your mind. And it's right here. Here's 20 years of proof right here. So guys, let's carry on. I'm gonna show you some other very interesting stuff that relates to the attack on the Capitol. And this was put out by a couple of our representatives on the 6th, on the year anniversary. So let's cut to that.
One more thing. Can we go up there? No? When we go in, are we going to get arrested when we go up there? You don't need to get shot.
This is the very last thing that happens before the breach. You've got Ray Epps whispering into this guy's ear, and this is the moment of breach. If you were the January 6th committee, wouldn't you want to know what Ray Epps whispered into that individual's ear? And here, this is the moment of breach. Epps, part of the breach squad. So, this is just the information that has been pieced together by citizens, by small media outlets. Imagine if we actually had the powers of the January 6th committee, the powers of the federal government to understand why Ray Epps, the evening of the 5th, is out telling people dispassionately, professionally, with laser focus that the objective is to enter the United States Capitol building. And then on the 6th, it's not the Proud Boys who engage in the initial breach. It's Ray Epps at that precise moment. Now, Ray Epps was originally on the FBI's list of most wanted individuals after the initial events on January 6th. But then the day after, Revolver News publishes an explosive report about Stuart Rhodes, who's involved with the Oath Keepers, then all of a sudden Ray Epps' name falls off the list. We've sent letters asking questions about that unexplainable circumstance, and the FBI and the Justice Department have given us no illuminating information. But
imagine that. They're not giving them any illuminating evidence or any kind of information. Wow, why would you have a guy FBI's most wanted list, and then when some information about another guy comes out who's one of the heads of the Oath Keepers, all of a sudden you're not on the FBI's most wanted list anymore, and you haven't even been arrested. That is suspicious. Well, let's see what Representative Greene has to say.
But here's some things that we do need to discuss. You know, I'm one of those people, and I'm not shy to tell you, I don't trust our government. And that's another reason why I ran for Congress, is because I felt like it's our government that is screwing everything up for the American people. But after what we've seen on January 6th and the videos that Congressman Gaetz just walked through, I can tell you right now, I don't trust our government even more. When I went through the DC jail, I'll tell you who I did not see. I did not see Ray Epps. I didn't see him in there wasting away for months on end, being denied his due process rights, being denied the ability to see his family, to get medical treatment, to get a haircut and shave. I didn't see him in there. You know who else I didn't see? I didn't see a man named John Sullivan, a man that has participated in Antifa, BLM, riots and the whole entire movement, but then all of a sudden decided to be a Trump supporter on January 6th. The same guy that was in the Capitol and filmed Ashley Babbitt's murder and then sold his videos to media outlets. He's not in the D.C. jail under Deputy Warden Kathleen Landerkin. So I think we have a lot of questions to ask, and the people that should be answering the questions is our FBI and our Department of Justice.
Well, pulling no punches whatsoever. It's easy to see why they've deleted her Twitter account. Okay. Yeah, she was just deleted off Twitter. So, yeah, they've censored her as well. Apparently, people don't like things that she has to say. But she's asking very valid questions, and she brings up a very good point about people that she did not see rotting away in prison in D.C., being held there without due process. Okay, these are the same types of things that happened to the guys in Guantanamo Bay after 9/11. Okay, this is how they're going to use the Patriot Act against American citizens. Right here. It's already happening. Okay, and they're just going to write new legislation that says, oh, it's for your safety. It was because there was a riot at the Capitol. Okay, well, we're going to carry on a little bit more. Let's hear a little bit more of what Congressman Greene has to say.
I want to point some things out to you all. With the U.S. Capitol riot, there is over 725 arrests that I know of, and only one case has been dropped. For BLM Antifa riots, there were over 16,240 arrests, and over 90% of those cases have been dropped. What's the difference there, everyone? I'll tell you. For the BLM Antifa riots and violence, the victims were the American people and communities and cities all across our country. But on January 6th, you know who the victim was? It was the Capitol and the members of Congress inside. My question is this: why is this Congress obsessed with itself and cares nothing about the American people?
Again, she's bringing up some really good points on how nothing was done after all the other riots, but all of a sudden this one, yep, now we've got to crack down, and now we're going to start labeling people as domestic terrorists and domestic extremists and instigators and all that. So it just goes to show that they're working one step at a time, one step at a time, one step at a time. And the corruption of the FBI has to be brought into play here. And they've been implicated in numerous events over the years of having, quote unquote, played a part now through informants and whatnot. But I'll let Representative Greene shed some more light on that for you.
Now, let's talk a little bit more about the FBI. They have quite a history of doing things. Remember, in Governor Whitmer's kidnapping plot, I can tell you that we know there were 12 FBI informants involved in that group, and we don't know how many federal agents were involved. Don't forget about the Bundy Ranch affair, where there were 15 FBI informants involved, and we don't know how many actual agents. But we can go back further. Another example would be in 1968 at the Democratic National Convention, where there were 10,000 protesters, and 1 out of 6 were federal undercover agents. You do the math, and that's approximately 1,600 federal agents at this protest in 1968 at the Democratic National Convention. Here at the Capitol security breach, we don't know how many federal informants, FBI agents, agents of people in other agencies. We don't know those numbers because we have a January 6th committee that is unwilling and refusing to ask those serious questions.
So you see, the FBI, they're not like some squeaky clean organization. You know, back in the day, J. Edgar Hoover was said to have had everyone wiretapped back in the 60s. So, I mean, if you think that they don't know what's going on, you're sorely mistaken. So I want to know how many federal agents were on the ground on January 6th, which is just what they're asking. And the FBI and the Attorney General, they refuse to give that information. So, what is the Attorney General and what do they and the FBI, what do they have to say? Well, Miss Marjorie Greene's going to tell you again.
We have Christopher Wray of the FBI and Merrick Garland of the Department of Justice, who we see are currently going after everyone involved, and they seem to think that this is the biggest investigation that they've ever needed to undertake in United States history. Well, you know what I think needs to be the biggest investigation in United States history is what is going on at the FBI and what is happening in the Department of Justice. And the American people deserve those answers because it's the American people and the taxpayers that pay for all of it.
Now, will we ever get those answers? Most likely not. Again, it's a big club, guys, and we're not in it. I don't think she's in it either. They're doing everything they can to keep her quiet. But I love that we actually have a representative that's out there actually saying something, that's trying to look out for us. Now, guys, I wanted to put a little bit more emphasis on how this investigation is in this committee is just an extension of the Patriot Act and how it's going to be used against U.S. citizens. Now, everybody heard about the parent-teacher meetings that were being flagged by the FBI. Now, this came from the Attorney General, from a letter that was written from one of the school boards calling some of these teachers domestic terrorists. Okay, that's a very strong accusation to call them that. Now, I've got a couple videos here that I want to throw at you, and this is pertaining to them, and it's the wording that I want you to understand. And just as Congressman Greene said that there were people in the D.C. jail sitting there without due process for a year now, something is wrong, okay? And they're using the same tactics where if you're labeled a terrorist, a domestic terrorist, any kind, you don't have any more constitutional rights. They can lock you in a hole forever and just leave you there. No lawyer, no phone call, no nothing, just lock you away, do whatever they want to you because you're a terrorist. Now, I'm going to show you right here how that is now being brought into a much wider range of vocabulary where that word domestic terrorism, domestic extremism is being thrown around much more and more and more. You hear it in the news a whole lot more. And why? Because it's part of their agenda. Now, let's bring up, this is between the Attorney General and Ted Cruz. I want to show you this little clip.
My God, a parent did a Nazi salute at a school board because he thought the policies were oppressive. General Garland is doing a Nazi salute at an elected official. Is that protected by the First Amendment?
Yes, it is.
Okay. 15 of the 20 on the face of it are not violent. They're not threats of violence. They're parents who are unhappy. Yet, miraculously, when you write a memo, the opening line of your memo, in recent months, there has been a disturbing spike in harassment, intimidation, and threats of violence. You're the Attorney General of the United States. This was not a tweet you sent. This is a memo to the Federal Bureau of Investigations saying, go investigate parents as domestic terrorists.
That is not what the memo says at all. It does not.
Is it what the letter says?
That is not what.
Is it what the letter says?
I don't care what the letter says.
You
What I
don't care. You said it was the basis of your memo. You testified under oath before the House of Representatives. The letter was the basis of your memo. Now you don't care about the letter?
The letter and public reports of violence and threats of violence. My memo says nothing about domestic terrorism, says nothing about parents committing any such things. My memo is an attempt to get an assessment of whether there is a problem out there.
So guys, I recommend you go through and you watch that entire exchange. I'm going to leave a link in the description below so you can see that whole video. It's pretty amazing to watch the Attorney General try to dodge all the questions that Senator Cruz is throwing at him. Now, guys, I don't agree with any politician across the board, but there are some very good questions posed here by Senator Cruz, and why the term domestic terrorist and violent extremist was used. And though the Attorney General denies the fact that he put it in the memo, he did state that the note he received was the full basis for the memo. And in that note, they do call the parents domestic terrorists and violent extremists. So if you're labeled a domestic terrorist, you lose all rights by the Constitution. If you're labeled a terrorist under the Patriot Act, and I'm going to leave a link for that whole thing so you can read through that entire thing in its entirety, which is a very interesting read as well. So guys, go through, do your research. Don't take my word for it. Don't take my word for it. Do your own research. I'll leave you links. I will leave you videos, links to videos, any of that stuff, but always question the narrative. Question what they're told, because there's motives behind it. And guys, if they're going to be labeling parents that stand up for their children as domestic terrorists, where does it end? Where does it end? Yeah. I'm going to leave you with a little quote by an incredibly despicable human being. That the world decided that it was in the world's best interest to fight a war against this gentleman and his ideals. So I'm going to read you a little quote from him. And this comes directly from Mr. Adolf Hitler out of Mein Kampf in chapter 15, which is on inherent self-defense. And this is a reflection of his observations of Germany's new democratic republic following the World War I armistice of 1918. And I quote, "A shrewd conqueror will always enforce his exactions on the conquered, but only by stages." They'll want to take them a little bit at a time and a little bit at a time. So guys, stay vigilant. Don't believe everything you're told. Do your research. Question the narrative. Always keep questioning it. And stay tuned for the next video, guys. We're going to go through and we're going to keep going down this rabbit hole a little more and more and more and more. And we're going to talk about big tech. We're going to talk about the media, because the media has a lot to play in this and in the narrative that you get. So on the next episode, guys, we're going to go through, we're going to explore the media and see how the media is owned by just a few different people. All the print, all the radio, all the TV. It's owned by just a few people. And you wonder why all these news stations all tell you the exact same thing, sounding like they're written all from the same script. Well, guys, I'm G. This is G on What? And we will see you next time.